recording. Okay, here we go. All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm David Blockstein. I am the co-director of Bard College's Solve Climate by 2030 project that features the Worldwide Climate and Justice Education Month. The Climate and Education Justice Month is actually concluded at the end of March, but we are continuing because now we are in Earth Month, so we are continuing our educational activities. The Worldwide Climate and Justice Education Month is a global project. You can see behind me, we've had participation. That's actually our map from 2023, but we have participation throughout the world, and I'm delighted to see that we have people with us from Pakistan and other places, and it's a pleasure to be working with you and to have you with us. Our goal is to spread climate change education and community building across the world, and this is what we are doing today. This presentation today is especially meaningful to me because Mike Tidwell, our presenter today, is not only a neighbor. I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. I live on Sycamore Avenue. Mike lives on Willow Avenue. We have the people before us who founded our town named the main streets after the amazing trees that existed at that time. And as Mike is going to tell you, unfortunately, the tree composition has changed here in our lovely city, and not always for the better. So Mike is a good friend, a fellow climate educator and advocate by profession. He is a journalist, and Mike, through his work as a journalist around the world, has seen the firsthand impacts of climate change, and that has moved him to be moved from just a reporter of climate change to an activist and an organizer to try to help to stop and to manage and to help us to adapt to climate change. And so Mike founded the organization that you can see in his logo there, Chesapeake Climate Action Network, a very active network in the Washington, D.C. and Maryland area that I am proud to be a member and supporter of that organization, doing wonderful things on a statewide and regional level. So um, the film and talk that Mike will give now, I'll let him introduce, but just to say that for all of us, we're experiencing climate change, excuse me, and we're experiencing it differently depending on who we are and where we are. And so the story that Mike is going to share with us is a story of how climate change is affecting his neighborhood, which is also my neighborhood. So I'll turn it to Mike Tidwell now. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you to Worldwide Teach. And thanks for all of you joining from all over the world. It's great to spend time with you today. I will not, there's no need to really expand my bio beyond what David told you. What we're going to do is show a 18-minute film that I think speaks for itself. It is set in our little neighborhood of Tacoma Park, Maryland, and it is based on my book named The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, A Story of Climate and Hope on One American Street. It was published by St. Martin's Press here in the United States about a year ago. It was named by Publishers Weekly magazine as one of the top 25 nonfiction books of 2025. And there's someone holding it up. Thank you. The spine. And it beyond this film that you're about to see, which is only 18 minutes long, there's going to be a longer documentary film made by PBS, that the public broadcasting system here in the United States, which has a lot of viewers, they've made a 30-minute documentary based on the book as well. So this is a shorter version made by a local filmmaker here in the Washington, D.C. area, based on my book, again, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue. So, Aaron, why don't we just cue the film? And then afterwards, I'll talk a little bit and take some questions. Climate change has gotten so bad that you could take a spinning globe and throw a dart at that globe, and wherever that dart lands, you could write a whole book about the conspicuous climate impacts right in that one little microdot, wherever it is in the world. And Aaron, can you pause it for a second? I've done it right here. So the audio is off. Have you hit all the?
I'm hearing it.
Is there a mismatch between how my mouth is moving and the sound? Because it is on mine.
Aaron wasn't paying attention.
Aaron, are you still here?
Yeah. I'm checking.
My neighborhood on the 71.
It looks like it is matching.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's just my computer. I see a lag.
Yeah, no, we're hearing from Ingrid in upstate New York that she's also hearing a lag on that. I don't know. Maybe do you want to try to,
Aaron? There's a setting.
Reload it.
There's a setting on audio in I think in Zoom where you have to. I forget what it is. You could text Lauren or text anybody on staff. Nicole. Zoom is clearly a tough one for us. Bear with us. But again, you could see this neighborhood, and when we get this audio worked out, we're gonna show the film. I will say that what I say early in the film is that climate change has gotten so severe around the world that you could throw a dart at a spinning globe, and wherever that dart lands, you can write a whole book about the impacts of climate change right in that little microdot, whether it's the highlands of Ethiopia or downtown Tokyo or the 7,100. Remember when Bart dropped the rain? If everyone can mute, if you're not muted. So yes, you can write a whole book about the impacts of climate change in that one little microdot. And so that's basically how the premise of the book. It is the first book ever written about the impacts of climate change in one small place, one little microdot. In this case, it is my one block. And Aaron, any updates?
Should be good to go.
Okay, you want to go back to the beginning?
Yes.
Yeah, let's start from the beginning.
Climate change has gotten so bad that you could take a spinning globe and throw a dart at that globe, and wherever that dart lands, you could write a whole book about the conspicuous climate impacts right in that one little microdot, wherever it is in the world. And the reason I know that is because I've done it right here in my neighborhood on the 7100 block of Willow Avenue. My name's Mike Tidwell. I live here in Tacoma Park, Maryland. I've lived here for the last 34 years. This is an old trolley neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Washington begins at the end of this block. This is my 100-year-old home behind me. And until recently, we had really, really big 150-year-old trees throughout this neighborhood. They have been dying in recent years, which prompted me to write the book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, a story of climate and hope on one American street, where I talk about the impacts of climate change throughout this neighborhood. But also there's hopefulness. At the same time that we've seen the passing of trees, we've seen the coming of clean energy. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna walk you around my block and tell this story so you can see what I write about in my book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue. I wanna show you right across the street from my house, we have big gaps in our tree canopy throughout this town. You can see right here, there's just a big opening. And if you had taken this shot 3 years ago, you would have seen a massive tree right here where this garden is. And you would have seen behind that house another really, really big tree, a 150-year-old tree. Those are just two examples of trees that have disappeared just in the last 2 years in this neighborhood. And in Tacoma Park, one of two things happen when our big trees come down. Either solar panels go up because somebody's roof is suddenly sunny, or gardens happen. So my neighbor Dorothy and I planted a garden. We've got some winter rye coming in, we got garlic right there. That is exactly where an 80-year-old oak tree was standing barely 2 years ago. But this is our neighborhood. At first glance, seems normal. You look around closer and you see a urban ecology in decline. I'm now in the backyard of one of my neighbors on Willow Avenue, and you can see this, the remains of this tree. This is a 150-year-old southern red oak that passed away in 2021. Like so many oak trees in my neighborhood, and that's because in 2018, Maryland and every other mid-Atlantic state got, by a long shot, record annual rainfall. Maryland got 2 feet more rain than normal. And what happened was there was a dip in the jet stream related to climate change. A warming Arctic means we have an erratic jet stream of wind in North America. That jet stream went all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico and brought moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and dumped it on the mid-Atlantic. And that rainfall just soaked the ground for so long in 2018, it triggered a mold in the soil called Phytophthora, which translates from Greek to plant destroyer. And that mold devastated the roots of thousands and thousands of big trees in this region, including this one. Born in the 1870s, outlived World War I, Teddy Roosevelt, the Great Depression, Vietnam War, the dawn of smartphones, killed by rotten roots, which stressed the tree so much when it tried to leaf out in 2019, it became vulnerable to ambrosia beetles. It was ultimately ambrosia beetles that killed a lot of the trees in this neighborhood. This one was able to beat back the beetles, but it just was devastated by the multiple impacts of climate change, insects, and now it's gone. Here in Willow Avenue, we still have a lot of trees, especially willow oaks, which are more tolerant of rainfall, heavy rain that we've been getting lately. But the real story of this neighborhood is that huge gap right there in our canopy, in the backyards of the homes on the northwestern side of Willow Avenue. That's where we've lost 500 years worth of tree growth just since 2019. That is where biggest focus of our sadness is. We're rooting for other trees to keep living on this block, but we have just lost so much. The other thing is oak trees are evolved to host more life forms than any other tree genus in North America. So that Miller tree, for example, hosted 500 to 1,000 forms of life. Oak trees are keystone species in any urban or rural neighborhood. So that gap of oak trees that have died has transformed the urban ecology of our neighborhood.
How would you describe how climate change is actually affecting people's lives, like with the tick bites, the Lyme's disease?
Lyme disease is a serious problem in Tacoma Park and throughout much of Maryland. Maryland's one of the worst states in the country with Lyme. I was bit by a tick in 2008. I was in my backyard. I was misdiagnosed for 6 years. It took till 2014 that I was actually diagnosed. And as a result, I, to this day, manage a condition of chronic Lyme disease. Periodically, I have to take antibiotics. I take herbal remedies. But as I was writing this book, I started asking around, well, who else has had Lyme?
Today, how many people in the room have had Lyme disease or have Lyme disease?
Wow.
Yeah.
How many people in this room have lost a tree in your yard or on your block? Raise your hand. Oh my God. When a tree dies in a national forest, it's just a number, it's a stat. But when it dies in someone's backyard, it's a friend. And so families like the Miller family here on Willow Avenue and throughout this neighborhood, they're all grieving these friends, these trees that they lived with for decades. And it's almost like we have this graveyard with these trunks being tombstones that we walk past, that we see every day, and we remember the passing of a great friend. We also know that being near big trees improves human health. It boosts our immune system. Our stress levels go down when we're near big trees. Our cortisol levels go down. There are studies that show that patients in hospital rooms who can see a tree through a window recover faster than patients who can't see a tree through the window. We know this concept of forest bathing from Japan, this sense of well-being that comes from being around trees. The question I ask in my book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, is as we lose these trees, especially these big canopy giants, what does that do for our health? We need to save the big trees we have, because in doing so, we're saving ourselves. This is a willow oak, 150 years old, that died not from rain, not from beetles, but from a tremendous windstorm that we had in July 2023. Again, extreme weather. So here, next to the tragically fallen 150-year-old willow oak, is a statue of St. Francis, the patron saint of the environment and animals. And miraculously, the tree just crumbled in many pieces around St. Francis and did not disturb St. Francis. So in the neighborhood, we consider this the St. Francis miracle. Here you can see another casualty of the extreme weather. This also was a southern red oak right here. It died in 2021. You know, it used to shade this whole corner of the block. There's my church right across the street. We would come out of church and just see this miraculous tree. In 2020, we had a storm so bad in Tacoma Park. We got 5 inches of rain in 1 hour, and the water just overwhelmed the city. It flooded the boiler room of my church. Water leaked into the preschool, and the church leaders went to the city and said, you have to do something about this. We can't ever have our basements being flooded like this, especially since we have a preschool. And the city said, we're broke. We don't have water money for flooding, but we do have sidewalk money. So the city, trying to adapt to climate change, wound up spending $45,000, busted up the sidewalk, brought in 20 tons of soil, elevated almost half a block of sidewalk. The sidewalk used to be down here, and now it's been elevated 14 inches. That might seem subtle to many people. If you don't know what you're looking at, you wouldn't notice it. This is a flood levee to keep water out of the church. Part of the problem, according to the city, is that not only are the storms getting bigger, but because we've lost so many trees, it complicates the problem. We have cascading impacts of climate change right on this block, because first we get the heavy rains of 2018, which damaged the roots of the trees and caused these many trees to die. But now we get these strong precipitation events and the trees aren't there to absorb the rain. The roots, which normally would absorb a lot of the rain, and the canopies, the leaves that would slow the rain down and provide that ecosystem service of flood prevention and mitigation, are no longer there, because if you had taken this shot 5 years ago, there would have been a massive 150-year-old willow oak in this frame, a 100-year-old white oak, an 80-year-old willow oak, and a 150-year-old red oak in the background there. All of those trees used to absorb flood water. They used to keep water from flooding into the church, and now they're gone. In one block, we have this microcosm of climate change. You heat the planet, you cause more rain, it kills trees, the disappearing trees compound the flooding problem, and then taxpayers have to pay for creative solutions just trying to keep up with these extreme events. So again, we've almost completed the tour around this square block. This is the Lawson Feasley house at the corner of Willow and Tulip. If you had taken this shot 5 years ago, you would have barely been able to see the house. There were so many old oak trees all around it, a real kind of urban forest around it. You could see it's a house now just completely flooded with sunlight. If you go a little bit further though, the title of my book is The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, a story of climate and hope on one American street. This is part of the hope that we feel. This is an amazing post oak. It's easily 150 years old. It's a tree that's adapted to both extreme floods and extreme droughts, and it seems to be in really good health. It's just a miracle of a tree. I'm now at my office in Tacoma Park. This is half a block from my house. This is the 7th floor of an office building. What's interesting is we can see from the neighborhood from the air. You can look right here and there's just lots of solar panels. There's solar panels on this roof right here. If you look over here, that's a brand new apartment building there in the distance. And on the top are things called heat pumps. They're compressors that both heat and cool the building. That building is fully electric. There's no gas burn for hot water or furnace. The stoves are electric. The heating and cooling of air space is all from electricity. And this is what we've seen all around this neighborhood. Solar panels, electric buildings. So that's the hope part, the coming of clean energy, even as we see changes on the ground in terms of falling trees, flooding, and Lyme disease. My organization, the Chesapeake Climate Action Network, we push for clean energy solutions to climate change in Maryland, Virginia, and DC. And from this office, you can see Maryland, DC, and Virginia in the distance, and we can see the product of our clean energy advocacy literally on the roofs around us. Often people ask me, tell me one thing that I can do. Please don't give me 10 things. You freaked me out about climate change. You've convinced me there's an emergency. And my answer is always the same. Develop a relationship with one group, one organization fighting climate change wherever you live. Donate money if you can. Go on their website, sign up for their email alert list. If you sign up for the email alert list for Chesapeake Climate Action Network, we're going to tell you when there's a vote in the State House. We're going to tell you when there's a rally. We're going to alert you to when the City Council is about to take on a climate issue. That's how you develop a relationship with a group. And that's what I encourage people to do. Are you still hopeful?
I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. The younger generations especially take the problem of climate change very seriously and very personally. I feel very hopeful we're going to be able to save democracy and the climate and humanity in that order. So yeah.
You know, there's reason to be very concerned and alarmed about the current administration in Washington, but the reality is no single president or Congress can stop the clean energy revolution. all over the world every day, human beings deploy 1 gigawatt of solar power every day. That's the equivalent of a nuclear power plant of solar every single day. Half of all the cars sold in China this year, the largest auto market in the world, will be electric cars. The world is moving on. We can solve this problem. We just have to go faster, and together as a group, in relationship with activist groups on climate change, we can make for a better planet where both we and our big trees can grow old together.
Thank you very much, Mike, for sharing this film. I saw it before a few weeks or a few months ago in our um, community library to a overflowing room. I was at um, the conversation between you and Congressman Raskin at our overflowing city municipal building, and as I'm listening to the film for the second time and thinking about this again in this context, I realized that when we started our project for Solve Climate by 2030 through our coordinated climate education, we started in year 2020, the COVID year, and we had dialogues, statewide dialogues, state by state. We had to do everything by Zoom at the time on climate solutions on a state level. And you, Mike, you may remember you were actually one of our speakers in that initial webinar. And in that time, all these changes that you've described have taken place. In 2020, when we had that initial webinar, those giant oaks were still on Willow Avenue. And I'm looking out in my backyard and I can see some of my neighbors' oaks that are still standing. I can also see that we have a new willow oak that is growing underneath a very large red oak. So there is regeneration, there is hope, and a lot of these solar power, solar panels, and other things, they didn't exist 6 years either. So I guess I'm going to start the question, and then we'll invite everybody else. But so if you can maybe look back, Mike, in this the decade of the 2020s so far, what are you seeing in terms of trajectories, both in um, climate impacts and climate solutions?
Well, you're right that, 2019, 2020, um, we had a massive climate event in the mid-Atlantic. A lot of people think of, in this country, when they think of big climate events, they think of wildfires in California, the bleaching of half the coral reefs in the Caribbean, of course, everything that's happening in the Arctic, et cetera, et cetera. But with the rains that we got in 2018 and the then following mass mortality of old oak trees in the mid-Atlantic in 2019, 2020, that was a climate event and it had profound physical impacts. But at this, as I say in the movie, at the same time, we've seen the passing of our biggest trees. And by the way, it's not just big trees in North America that are finding it harder and harder to endure in the face of climate change. The giant cedars of Lebanon are all burning up in wildfires. The iconic stone pines of Rome, Italy, are dying from climate-related insect infestations. The bristlecone pines of the American West are literally dying of thirst because of record droughts. These are trees that are 5, 6, 7,000 years old that are all now dying from lack of water. So it's not just here that we're seeing this. So yes, that has accelerated since 2019, 2020. But I will also say that had you sat on a curb on my block, Willow Avenue in Tacoma Park, Maryland in 2019, you would have sat there for quite a while before you saw an electric car. I mean, you just would have. Not many electric cars would have gone by my street. Now, in my entire neighborhood of Tacoma Park, you can barely go a couple of minutes without hearing what my neighbor Paula calls the faint harmony of angels of an electric car driving by. It's just very common, and we've had one of the first gas stations in America convert entirely from pumping gas to charging electric cars in Tacoma Park. We have the expansion of solar. New apartments built in the District of Columbia now are almost all 100% electric. So electric heat pumps on the roof for heating and cooling, electric stove tops, heat pump hot water systems, you name it. No fossil fuels are flowing or being combusted in these major new apartment buildings throughout the capital of America and throughout a lot of cities and counties in the United States. So we've seen a lot of progress there at the same time that we're seeing these intensifying climate impacts. And there's one passage in my book where I sort of try to address that amazing dichotomy of a climate that's slipping away from us at the same time that we're seeing improvements in clean energy. And it's sort of like we're in a threshold, we're in a doorway, and through that doorway leads to the oblivion of death of the planet. And we're trying to hang on to the planet and keep it from going through that door to the other side. And at the same time that we're trying to save the planet from passing over to an irreversible decline, we're midwifing this clean energy reality. So both are going on at the same time. While alarm bells go off and warning signs are everywhere, we see this hope and optimism of clean energy all at the same time. It's a maddening and wonderful time to be alive.
That's great. Um, and yes, please raise your hand if you want to unmute or put questions in the chat. I'll just say as an advance on Tuesday afternoon, the 27th of April, we're going to have Vanessa Keith, who is an architect and trying to imagine the futures and has written a book called 2100 and is developing a virtual reality game called 2180 to try to show us different futures that we can have. So we'll send out information about that. But let's turn to Ingrid Zabel, who is the climate change manager at the Paleontological Research Institute in Ithaca, New York, a wonderful institution. So go ahead, Ingrid.
Thank you. So thank you for the film. It was really inspirational and thought-provoking. As I was watching it, I was also thinking of more mundane things like insurance. Like when you showed that image of the tree falling on a house that had damaged the house, or you talked about flooding in the church basement. Flooding is often not covered by insurance. And I was curious of the people you know in your neighborhood, um, does anyone feel motivated by insurance issues to do something about climate change? Are they helped? Are they hindered by insurance? Are people worried that things won't be covered? Um, I'm just curious about the role of the insurance industry in helping to motivate people to do something about climate change.
Yeah, it's a great question. Insurance rates are rising everywhere in the United States, including in my neighborhood. I think 4 or 5 years ago, I paid maybe $1,200 a year for home insurance, homeowners insurance, and now it's twice that. But we've got it easy compared to other parts of the United States, Louisiana, California, Eastern Shore of Maryland. Insurance companies are either, raising their rates to unimaginable heights, or they're just withdrawing from the market completely. They just won't offer insurance in climate vulnerable areas, especially shorelines. And without insurance, it's more or less impossible to conduct a modern economy if you can't ensure that a property um, will be fixed or repaired uh, after a storm. Then why build the property in the first place? Why launch a business? Why put any capital investments at risk if you think you can lose them tomorrow because of a climate extreme? So it's a real problem in some parts of the United States, Florida especially. The government has taken on the role, the state government, as an insurer of last resort, and they are wildly underfunded. So if another Katrina or Wilma or Rita passes through hurricanes of that size pass through Florida, it will bankrupt the state insurance company. It's guaranteed to bankrupt the insurance company and lead to a real insurance crisis. So, our number one defense, our number one strategy in places like Florida in terms of insurance is we're just counting on good luck. And that's just not a good policy. So I think you're going to see insurance, cost of insurance or absence of insurance playing a bigger and bigger role in the U.S. economy in the face of climate change. And hopefully it will motivate a change in policy. Honestly, I haven't seen it yet, Ingrid. You'd think that these sort of forcing events would lead to enlightened government policies. In some cases it has, but not nearly to the scale of the threat.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you. Anybody else would like to unmute and ask a question? I'd love to hear from our friends in Pakistan, where what do you think as you're watching this film and listening to Mike talk? How does this relate to the experiences that you're having in Pakistan? Or if you have a question for Mike about that.
Well, I will say that uh, many of us here in the United States are inspired by Pakistan and the incredibly rapid conversion to solar power. I know that in the last few years alone, motivated by a unreliable grid and cost of electricity in Pakistan, literally millions of people have done do-it-yourself solar installations using cheap solar panels from China, and you can go on YouTube and find installation instructions in so many different languages. And it's just been a miracle of what Pakistan has done. And I hope is a model for other states. I think we still have to figure out, when people abandon the grid and begin generating their own electricity, there's still some people who can't leave the grid, and therefore disproportionate costs of maintaining the grid can fall on vulnerable people. I think that can be figured out, but it's just amazing to see what Pakistan has done in such a short period of time.
Other questions or comments? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Frank, if you want to ask something. Or
Am I the Frank you're talking about?
yes.
Yeah. First of all, Mike, thank you for your book. I loved it. It was given to me by my daughter and son-in-law, Julie Zito and Tom Lalonde, who live in Tacoma Park over on Sycamore Avenue. So they gave me your book as a Christmas present. Love the book. I get nervous when I read about your trip to Greenbelt, Maryland, to NASA Building 33 that's on 1,300 acres. The wonderful story of you and your friend Ning Zheng going into that building, and I couldn't help but feeling if the Trumplings ever read your book, they're going to want to shut that building down, just like they've canceled Voice of America and so many programs that it scares me. Hopefully, none of the Trumplings will read your book because it's too good. It talks about the good that NASA does, that brainy people like you do, and if anything, the Trumpers want to get rid of all these brains. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, thank you, Frank, and thanks for reading the book and your wonderful comments. Building 33 is one of the largest concentrations of Earth scientists in the world. They work with or for NASA on the campus, the Goddard Space Institute campus in Greenbelt, Maryland, right in the DC area. And I visit that building and talk to folks there about climate change. I do describe efforts, all the good work that's being done to monitor climate change, also work that's being done to consider ways to reflect sunlight away from the planet, in the possibility that we just don't get our act together in time and we start to see runaway climate change and, real widespread agricultural failure, et cetera. Do we need a plan B? And I write in the book, and others have advocated for, including James Hansen, our most famous American climate scientist, that we ought to at least research methods for possibly reflecting sunlight away from the planet, so-called geoengineering. And there are some folks at Goddard who share that view. No one's calling for deployment of any kind of crazy system to reflect sunlight with mirrors in space or anything like that. But are there practical, reasonably safe, or at least safer than runaway climate change ideas that we might lower the Earth's temperature by reflecting sunlight temporarily? In terms of NASA, yeah, they've seen big cuts, similar to lots of federal agencies. Building 33 is still there. There's still a lot of Earth scientists who are there who have survived. They've lost a lot of people. A lot of people have left on their own, just tired of the threats and the nonsense. But a lot have hung on. I'm not aware that anyone in the Trump administration is aware or bothered to read my book, so I hope I haven't contributed to exposing these good people to any problems. But they have absorbed their share of mindless cuts similar to other agencies.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you both. Uh, we have a comment and a question in the chat from Pakistan. So I'll read the comment and then the question. So the comment is, I really love that how the video gives a real life example and it is very motivating. And then another of our Pakistani student colleagues says, I would love to know what keeps you motivated to keep all of these projects despite increases in industrialization.
What keeps me motivated is we have no choice. We have to fight for a safe climate. We do. Everyone in the world is counting on us, whether they realize it or not. I am motivated by three main things. One is my son, Michael Alexander Tidwell, born May 30th, 1997. And he's the world to me. And I every day live with the fear that he's going to have a fraction of the opportunities in his lifetime that I've had in mine, because of climate change. Second, I'm motivated by my Christian faith, which teaches me that creation is not ours to destroy. It's sacred, it's beautiful, it's magnificent. It's ours to protect and to be good stewards of. And third, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where among the village people I lived with in promoting fish culture, it wasn't a question of clean wind-powered electricity versus dirty coal-fired electricity. These people didn't have electricity. It wasn't a question of gas-guzzling Hummer versus plug-in electric car. These people didn't have cars, period, or roads. And so these are people who are completely innocent in contributing to climate change, yet they are being pummeled by record floods and droughts people who don't have storage capacities for their food. They have to harvest their crops twice a year, dry them out, and make them last until the next harvest. So, so these are people completely vulnerable to the changing climate systems that we have knowingly let loose in the rest of the world. And I submit that the suffering that will be endured by especially innocent people in countries around the world is completely and totally morally unacceptable. And we have to fight that here in the United States and around the world.
Yes, thank you, Mike. That's a great answer. And I'll add to that that one of my motivations comes from people in Pakistan, like Faiza and Haya, who are also suffering the consequences of our overconsumption. And yet, here you are at 9 o'clock, now almost 10 o'clock at night in your time. You're, in teenagers and eco officers in your school. And, that's very inspiring to me. So here's a question, um, or maybe a comment more from Martha. Thank you for your book and this film. I wonder if fallen trees could be buried regularly, building levees to protect against flooding. Thank you for your Peace Corps service.
Um, Interesting. So in the book, I do talk about Ning Zhang, this professor at University of Maryland who has an idea to bury trees, a lot of the fallen trees that we're seeing in this region, bury them in low oxygen clay around the DC area, thus storing their carbon for up to 1,000 years. If you bury a tree below the biologically active surface of soil, they will decompose very, very, very slowly. I mean, we're still finding Viking ships in estuaries in Europe that have been stuck, buried in mud for 1,000 years and are in very good condition. So we know that wood can stay non-decomposed for a long period of time. And what that would do is you just take that carbon that these big trees have sequestered for 50, 100, 150 years, and instead of sending them to landfills where they decompose and vent their CO2 back to the atmosphere, making climate change worse, or being wood chipped into playground cover and they vent that CO2 in a matter of years, or worse, they're incinerated and they immediately send that CO2 to the atmosphere. Instead of all that, what if we broke that cycle, buried these trees for 1,000 years or more? Ning Zhang calls it reverse coal. And there's good science behind it. And he started by burying his first 100 tons of trees outside of Baltimore, Maryland, in an experiment. So I do write about that, burying trees. In terms of burying trees to create flood levees, maybe, hopefully, we won't reach a point with climate change that we need massive levees big enough to hold trees inside them to protect ourselves. But it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so here's from another of our neighbors here. Natalie says you might mention that the city of Tacoma Park has supported the planting of new trees throughout the city, and that she and her family now have 4 young saplings growing to replace their large, massive oaks that they lost 6 years ago.
Yeah, the city of Tacoma Park has an aggressive tree planting system. I recommend that people plant oak trees because they are considered keystone species in any urban. I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. In any urban, rural forest, oak trees are keystone species. They support more life forms than any other tree genus in North America. They're just good for other critters. In fact, right now, here in mid-April in Tacoma Park, our oak trees are wakening up. They're communicating with the sun. They're conducting photosynthesis. They're leafing out. And they also are host to literally billions of tiny caterpillars from the dozens of species of moths that oak trees are co-evolved with in North America. And as those small caterpillars emerge, literally as we speak right now, over now and over the next few weeks, they do so at the same time that migratory songbirds are arriving from South and Central America. So this food is critical to some of our most brilliant and wonderful birds and most threatened birds in this hemisphere. And if they die, especially the old ones, it's just completely disruptive, not only to the local ecosystem, but to this migratory ecosystem. So I encourage people to plant oak trees. Our fear is that, the trees that are dying now in this neighborhood are 100 years old or older, and they're all dying at the same time. And it's clearly climate. The oak trees that we plant now, will they live to be 100? Will they live to be 50 in this challenging new world of climate change?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Frank has another question or comment. Go ahead, Frank, unmute, please.
Yeah, I don't want to dominate, but I do have because all of us here are concerned about climate and the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. I haven't heard anybody nationally talk about ways in America and around the world we could reduce one huge piece of pollution. Every day in this country, the United States, we have 55,000 airline flights. Around the world, 125,000 planes taking off and landing every single day. Is there some way America and the world could get by instead of 55,000 flights in this country? Could we cut that to 10 or 15,000 flights? Is there such a need for that huge use of fuel and pollution in the air every single day around the world and around this country? It just seems wasteful and unnecessary.
I mean, I certainly try to avoid air travel if it's not related to my work. And even when, I mean, I just drove to Columbus, Ohio in my electric car, my Ionic 5 electric car, to give a speech. And I could have flown, surely would have been easier, but I too am bothered by the carbon intensity of air travel. I try to limit myself to only one airplane trip per year for personal reasons. Um, uh, so yes, I mean, unless and until we have planes that can run on biofuels that are sustainably generated, or smaller planes that are run on battery power, which is already happening. Some small transport commuter planes in California are all battery operated. But we're not going to have battery operated transatlantic flights anytime soon, just because we don't have batteries big enough to get lots of people across oceans. So flying less certainly is a morally defensible habit. I would also add to that a bigger problem than air travel is livestock consumption, meat consumption. It's something that the climate movement rarely really talks about. But there is a new book out by a guy named Bruce Friedrich about meat consumption and its impact on climate. And he and other solid scientists have estimated that 20% of all the world's greenhouse gas emissions are coming from livestock agriculture worldwide. That's land use that leads the number one source of deforestation in the world is livestock agriculture, number one source of water pollution, number one source of soil pollution from pesticides and waste from animals. So I call myself a climatarian. I am a vegetarian because of my climate concerns, not because I don't like to eat meat. I love to eat meat. Who doesn't like to eat meat? But I don't eat it because of its impact on climate change. And I will say to everyone on this call, I've done a lot of difficult things in my life, learned foreign languages, quit smoking. You live long enough, you're going to do some tough things in your life. And giving up meat's not even on the list of top 20 difficult things. It's just not that difficult, especially with amazing international foods, at least that we see here in the United States. which are vegetarian based, whether it's Ethiopian or Indian, and just a lot of alternative meats like Impossible burgers at Burger King. Even more important than reducing air travel is reducing meat consumption. And we cannot solve the climate crisis without dramatically reducing the amount of meat that people eat per capita around the world.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, well, I would say both. Air travel. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go and see you all in Pakistan because, yeah, we're not doing those international trips anymore and really trying to limit our local trips. Um, and also, yeah, we're um, primarily we don't eat red meat anymore and rarely eat any animal protein. Um, so the comment from Ingrid about EVs, electrical vehicles, and this I'll be the last comment, and then I have just one other question I'm going to ask. A radio story about the latest electric vehicles from China, which can fully charge in 9 minutes and a range of about 1,000 kilometers because of technical advances in battery technologies. Do you want to comment on that at all, Mike?
Yeah, I would love to be able to get one of those cars. Um, our president, Donald Trump, is doing massive harm to the US economy and to the global atmosphere with his retrograde policies on clean energy. It's just stunning. The Chinese are going to increasingly capture the electric vehicle market. I mean, forget petrostates. China is becoming the world's first electro state, um, providing all the materials countries need to become fully electrified, whether it's electric vehicles, solar panels, batteries. China is increasingly taking the lead, including these cars that can charge in very, very short periods of time and go long, long distances. When you could get, 60, well, I guess 1,000 kilometers, so miles, that's 620 miles of charge in 9 minutes. You've solved range anxiety. You've solved the problem. And so once that technology gets here, and it will get here, though there will be no financial incentive to drive internal combustion engine cars. Already, electric vehicles have almost no maintenance. Car and Driver estimated that you will save $10,000 over the lifetime of a typical electric vehicle compared to an internal combustion vehicle just on maintenance and the lower cost of electricity versus fossil fuels. So there's already a huge advantage. And then once you solve this issue of range anxiety, that's it. The internal combustion engine will be a dinosaur very rapidly.
Thank you, Mike. So from having our cars powered by ancient dinosaurs to having the cars disappear like the dinosaurs, those cars. So I want to close with one final thing. First, a comment that these webinars and other virtual events will continue at least through April. We have one that is especially, I think that our young friends in Pakistan will appreciate next Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. My time in Eastern U.S., 6 p.m. Pakistan. We will once again have Ms. Camille and her rooster Brio and free range rescue rooster Brio. And she's going to show a clip from her PBS public broadcast film called Kids for Positive Change, showing the young people that she's worked with, similar to the young people in Pakistan. And so, Mike, I'd just like you to maybe make some closing comments about the youth and the role of the young people in climate solutions.
Yeah, as Jamie Raskin says in the film, and for those outside of the United States, Jamie Raskin is a member of Congress in the House of Representatives in the United States who's really taken a lead in fighting to preserve democracy and fight climate change. And as he says in the film, young people really get this issue in some ways more profoundly than our older generations who've caused the problem. And unless and until young people are not just part of the movement, but centered in leadership at the front of the movement, we're never going to solve this problem. And you're starting to see that. And my message to people who are, under 30 is, this planet's been through tough times before. Generations have fought enormously difficult battles for social change before, overcoming moments that when it seemed like there was no hope, and yet hope prevailed and change happened. So don't get discouraged, no matter what you hear from leaders in the United States or elsewhere. Don't get discouraged, no matter how difficult the impacts of climate change seem to be. I wouldn't keep doing this work. I wouldn't be participating on this call if I didn't believe we still have a really good opportunity and chance to solve this problem. And I will say, Aaron, my colleague, just dropped in the chat a link where if you're interested in getting a copy of my book, The Lost Trees of Willow Avenue, all proceeds of which go to the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. Check the link. Yeah, there, Frank's holding up the book. And you could get a copy. We'll mail it to you anywhere in the world, signed copy, if you're interested in getting a copy. And if you're in the United States, look out for a PBS special in July based on the book.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. That's a great way to conclude the webinar. If people want to stay on, I'm going to stop the recording in a moment, but if people want to stay on for a couple minutes, Mike and I do have a few minutes. And again, I just want to thank you, Mike, for your leadership and for spending time with us today. And thanks everybody for joining us for this. And we hope that you'll be joining us next Tuesday for Kids for Positive Change. And we'll also have some other webinars coming up from our friends, the Young Action for Climate and Leadership from the Philippines. All of that will be in emails that you'll receive. And we have the chat that or the recording of this webinar, which we will be sharing with everybody. So thank you all for joining us, and especially thank you, Mike.
And I do have to go.